Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined for the first time by one of the young up-and-comers of Falcons Twitter. He is Daniel Flick at DFlickDraft. I did check in with Daniel before the show to make sure we're not violating any labor laws by having him on here, and so that's good. We got the big thumbs up there from Daniel. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, Daniel, how are you doing today?
You know what? Eric Robinson I think he said yesterday, I'm doing, and I could not relate more at this point. It's late in the week. It's been a long week, a lot going on, but you know what? We're having fun with it. 3 weeks away from the draft. Exactly. So fun times for sure. Glad to be on.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad to have you guys. Daniel, for those of you that don't know, Falcons writer over at Falcon Report FN on SI Now, also an NFL Draft writer for ATB Network. Love those guys too. And of course, the co-host of the 404 The Falcon podcast show. Is it a podcast or a show or both?
Yeah, it's a podcast.
Okay. I've seen the podcast before, but I didn't know if there was like a video element because, I'm the king of just having 4 versions of everything. But
No, right now we're a very inconsistent podcast. I will say that for sure.
It's the best way. It's the best way to start.
Yeah.
You got to keep the audience guessing. Yeah.
There you go. Drive up the hype. There you go.
Exactly. So we're going to get into it with Daniel today, guys. Obviously, the title of the episode is Falcons NFL Draft Strategy, but I do want to get Daniel's thoughts sort of on the offseason and the quarterback, quote-unquote, controversy, depending on where you sit on that spectrum, I guess. And then, of course, lots of draft talk. But let's start there because nothing gets people, fired up on the Twitters more than the quarterback discussion right now. So to get that engagement, let's go ahead and start the show off with that. Do you give the Falcons a D- for their offseason because they did not pursue Lamar Jackson?
Oh yeah, no. I woke up just peeved about it, just irate. No. I mean,
mad.
Yeah, furious. I like flipping tables and stuff. No, but actually, the way that it felt the whole offseason is that Ritter would get the nod to me is just kind of the direction that it felt like it was heading towards, Shrine Bowl, Combine, all that stuff. And to me, as a team building enthusiast, I always lean towards letting the rookie quarterback have a chance, right? And I feel like Ritter showed enough progress to where it was worth investing in him for at least the 2023 season, and then reevaluating again next year. And so to me, that was always for me the preferred approach. And Lamar, great player, obviously, but Arthur Blank, for as much of some of his comments have kind of blown up for the wrong reasons. A few of his comments about Lamar and the cap and how he'd take up a quarter of the cap, and whether the actual percentage would be that high, maybe not, but close enough. It really was logical. And again, even if Ritter doesn't end up hitting, the way that I view it is you've got a really good roster now built around him, or at least an improving roster around him. To set up a encouraging 2024, if nothing else, if Ritter ends up not taking the step that a lot of people feel that he can. And so, I'm not losing sleep overnight about Lamar Jackson not being a Falcon. I think they did the right thing. And I would say a D- is definitely quite harsh from the Football Outsiders people. That was a little extreme. But
yeah. They should give a D- to the CEO for not paying those guys, by the way, the Football Outsiders guys. Even though I don't agree with that article, they deserve to be paid for that article, even if I don't personally agree with it. So Champion Gaming, get off your ass and go pay those guys already.
They deserve something, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, but yes, I mean, ultimately, the Lamar saga started so fun. Like I would tease it, after a really bad Falcons game mid-season, there's like a slight chance maybe they could trade for Lamar, because this could fall apart. And back then I was enjoying myself. Now I'm no longer enjoying myself. It's gotten to the point where people are just like sort of wish casting it into existence. Like, well, you see, this is actually 5-dimensional chess by the Falcons. They have Arthur Blank out there, Arthur, we love you, but, really like bending over backwards with these comments, trying to, which maybe just don't say anything next time, Arthur. I mean, I appreciate him trying to give us something, but maybe just don't say that next time. But, generally you don't have the owner involved in this sort of smokescreen. Typically it's more the coaches and the general manager pulling that off. So, but it doesn't seem to have calmed down the cries for Lamar from certain sections of the fan base. Love you guys, but maybe calm
We
down.
love.
But certainly not from the national media. So do you think there's anything like? Do you think this is going to follow us all the way until Lamar like signs his tender with the Ravens, basically?
At this point, it has to. Like, I mean, I don't know what more the Falcons or anybody else has to do when you've got the head coach, the general manager, and the owner all saying that they are going to start Ritter at quarterback next year. And you still have people, national media, fans alike, who are saying, no, it'll be Lamar. I don't really know who else. I don't know. You know what? I guess they want the official Kevin Knight source Falcons are starting Ritter. Maybe it's that. Maybe they need the old Kevin Knight stamp of approval. But
Apparently.
no, it's I don't really know what more the Falcons could do to voice that they're going to be starting Ritter next year without people until people understand that like it's actually that's what they're planning on doing. That's how they're approaching the whole offseason from here. So at this point, if it hasn't stopped, it probably won't until Lamar is actually a Baltimore Raven again for a long period of time, or wherever else he might go. A Colt, apparently, maybe a Colt, but at this rate, I've lost a lot of faith. I will say that I've lost the faith in the saga ending at any point.
Yeah, it's gonna stick with the team for a while, but you as fans can move on from it because I mean, I remember it was last week where I tweeted out, oh yeah, they're down to like close to 9 million, so like we could probably put the Lamar thing to bed now. Like they're probably mostly done with free agency. They're probably mostly done with this stuff, and they can't really make any sort of Lamar offer that the Ravens couldn't match. And the people were like, well, Kevin, if they max restructure, Jake Matthews and max restructure somebody else and trade some people, they could still, do this. It's like, well, you got me there, guys. You got me. So technically you're right. Technically correct. The best kind of correct. So
you have to appreciate the people who are really crunching the numbers to find that stuff out. You know what? We love that portion of Falcons Twitter. The passion is just it's unmatched. It is unmatched, and I greatly respect those people for their how firm they are in their beliefs. I will put it that way. So
yeah. You're telling me there's a chance, yeah. So there will be. But going on to the wider conversation around quarterback, the Falcons have met with all the top quarterbacks at this point. I don't believe they're really interested. I think you have basically said something similar, but officially this is your take now. Do you think we're getting a quarterback at 8 or some sort of wild trade up scenario at this point?
Lock it in. I feel like I'm on deal or no deal right now.
Yeah, you got it. This is the binding take now. So
you know what? I'm gonna smash the red button right here. No quarterback. No quarterback. No quarterback. So it's yeah, no, I'd be stunned. I'd be very surprised. I was telling somebody today, I think they like Anthony Richardson as a player, as a prospect, and I think they're intrigued by him. And it's hard not to be with how physically talented he is. And I don't think a lot of people would argue that he's a good fit, or not that he's not a good fit in what Arthur Smith wants to do offensively. Right. Like I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think he'd be, a natural fit. If he hits his upside, it'd be a lot of fun. But I don't really think that's something that they're like, hey, let's trade up for, right? Like, I don't think they're actively searching right now, trying to move up. And I feel like when they signed Heineke to $7 million, whatever, I believe it was. And now, again, the whole rookie quarterback contract situation with Ritter kind of, it's not like it'd be, terrible on your cap to have another first round quarterback on the books. But at the same token, your quarterback room gets a little bit heavy at that point. And so I feel like I'd put the talk to rest on quarterback at 8. I mean, I'd be stunned. But if there's one guy that fell and they like legitimately considered, I think it'd be Anthony Richardson, but I don't think he gets to 8. And even if he did, I'm really not 100% sure they'd actually pull the trigger on it. But how do you feel about that, Kevin? I'm actually very, very curious to hear your take.
Yeah, I basically exactly the same. I don't think a trade up is in the cards. This team doesn't really do that in the first round so far, at least. And they've shown that they're willing to trade, certainly, both down and up. But more on day 2 so far. And so I think that's probably where we'll see that. I do think a trade down would be considered. And I do think that it's wise to do the diligence on any of these quarterbacks if they do fall. The one that I think they would consider, like you said, is probably Richardson because he fits the archetype so well, and the Falcons wouldn't need to rush him onto the field, which I don't think Richardson's as far away as some people think, but also it would be nice to not need to force him out there this year. So yes, I think if Richardson makes it to 8, you would be tempted, as any NFL evaluator would, by his sort of 1-of-1 ceiling, more athletic Cam Newton, basically. But also, we can't discount that the Falcons would take Anthony Richardson, then Felipe Franks exits, Anthony Richardson moves into the Felipe Franks role. And, this is now the ultimate plan, is that we need, that Florida quarterback turned tight end, this Florida quarterback turned tight end. No. So that would be the darkest timeline. So we're not going to talk about that, but
I haven't even thought about it like that. You're 100% right. What if Kyle Trask gets the free agency market? He's got a big body.
We could just have all the Florida quarterbacks and turn them into an entire tight end room. I mean,
with Kyle Pitts there too.
Exactly. We already got the top one. So
fascinating. Look at us.
That's long term. Long term. Well, call us Falcons. We've got the long term plan. The vision is there for that to happen. But I do think, if Anthony Richardson does fall to 8 too, it'll be a lot easier to trade down. So people that want the Falcons to trade down at that point probably has a good chance of happening. But again, I don't think he's getting past 4. Definitely not. I think he might not get past 3, so it seems unlikely at this point. The one that's likely to be there is, I don't know that likely is the right word. 50% or less chance that Will Levis is still there.
Right.
I probably would have Ritter above Levis on if I was ranking quarterbacks. I was very high on Ritter, so take that for what it is. I was also very high on Malik Willis, so not claiming to be a quarterback expert, but I don't think Levis really does anything where I would be like, oh, I would rather have him than Ritter. His arm's better, obviously, but other than that, I think Ritter scored higher in all of my evaluation stuff than Levis. So I wouldn't see the point of it, but I know some people think that the Falcons they can't possibly be telling the truth. And I get that because NFL teams do lie a lot, but it seems like with everything that's happened, Taylor Heineke signing, all this, that there's a chance they might just be telling the truth. All of this quarterback talk just could be a big ol' nothing burger, as someone has said in the past.
Yeah, and what else is really interesting? A part of the whole plan here of Atlanta's entire regime lying about the quarterback deal is that they've also been lying directly to every free agent who's come on to every press conference and said Heineke's coming on. Yeah, I'm here to back up Ritter, is what he said. Were the Falcons lying to Heineke when they told him that you're going to be Ritter's backup? Is that part of the plan too?
It's all part of it. They told the free agents to go out and lie in their press conferences to convince everyone that they're not going for quarterback with the ultimate goal of trading down for 8 by convincing everyone they're going to take a quarterback, and then flipping those picks into a Lamar Jackson trade, then doing all of the restructures that we said to fit him under the cap. This is the plan, I think. I'm gonna have to start writing this down because this is getting very complicated. But, So
I can't believe it. Yeah, that's playing chess. That is completely just playing chess. Is like throwing a smoke screen at your own free agents too. That's really a mastermind plan when you really think about it.
That would be interesting. It would definitely make everyone very angry. Bold strategy, but can't fully discount it, I guess. But there are other positions in the draft, other players that they're probably much more likely to pursue. And we could just start with 8, but I don't know exactly where you're sort of leaning there in terms of your top targets at 8. There's a lot of edge guys people seem to like, a lot of corners. Obviously, the man himself, Bijan. So, where are you sort of leading right now with your sort of preferences at 8?
Quarterback and Devin Witherspoon is where I would lean right now. If I had to make a pick, he would be the guy for me. I think if you look at the body type that historically Steven Jackson has worked with in the secondary, even Jerry Gray, who's kind of in an assistant role on that side of the ball. but worked with corners in Green Bay. It's always been kind of the 5'10", 5'11", 180, 190 type of guys, and most of the guys they've signed in free agency have fit that same thing as well. And Witherspoon is right in that mix, right? And so I feel like Gonzalez and Witherspoon are very, very comparable as far as overall grade and rankings. I mean, it's probably going to flip back and forth, just from any analyst you ask, right? I mean, it's really, really close between those two guys. And so to me, it's going to come down to personal preference at 8. I think if they draft a corner. Now, I think on that note, I think if Tyree Wilson ends up at pick 8, then I think they would run that pick to the podium. I think he is a tremendous fit for what Ryan Nielsen wants to do defensively. I mean, I believe he's 6'5", 274 is what he weighed in at the combine. I mean, he's twitchy. I mean, closing burst in space I thought was just phenomenal. And versatile guy, plays up and down the line of scrimmage, dropping the coverage. I mean, he's just an all around, to me, an impact player. And I think if you're the Falcons, he's the type of guy that you'd want to add into that room. I also don't know that he gets to 8, which is a particular problem for the mock draft community. But again, I think when you're looking at realistic options, I think there's a chance that Witherspoon goes before the Falcons. I think the Raiders, the pick before Atlanta, are pretty high on Witherspoon, which kind of throws another little twist into that plan. But in that situation that Witherspoon's off the board, I don't think the Falcons would have a problem with Gonzalez, but I do think that would make Bijan, our Lord and Savior Bijan, a little bit more enticing for some people. But I don't know. I've tried to stay away from as much Bijan talk as possible, besides saying that I love Bijan as an individual person and as a football player. But selfishly, Bijan, I would love to cover an offense with Bijan Robinson playing in it and being able to, hop on press conferences with Bijan. He's just a great kid, great guy. Love Bijan. And so selfishly, I wouldn't be irate with the pick. I will say that. But, team building me is not like run the pick to the podium if Bijan's there, right? But like I would lean Witherspoon. To answer the question right now, Witherspoon would be like probably if I had to put money on it, I would probably lean Witherspoon at this moment.
Yeah, and it seems like with the team probably going to more man coverage, press man coverage, there's no one better than Devon Witherspoon at that. So going for that wouldn't shock me at all. He obviously has the best tape. I mean, we could talk all day about Christian Gonzalez and basically that he's the prototype for quarterback and he's an outstanding, just amazing athlete. His tape's not as good as Witherspoon. It's just not. So, we on last night's live, we talked about with Eric, it was like, well, do you want the prototype ceiling or do you want the like ready-made, probably elite cornerback 2 in Devon Witherspoon alongside AJ Terrell? Because I think you could make arguments for both. Like, oh, Gonzalez has time to develop into that elite corner because he doesn't have to be CB1 immediately with Terrell here. And with Witherspoon, it's like, well, you already have an elite CB1, so you don't need Witherspoon to be that guy. He could just come right in and bolster this. So I think there's exciting arguments for both. And I do think corner is the most likely position right now at 8 to get drafted. You did mention Tyree Wilson, and I agree. I think the edge they're looking for based on their moves is basically Calais Campbell. Like, they would like to get Calais Campbell or Cameron Jordan or whatever, but they would like, and they did get Calais Campbell, so that's nice. But they would like to get a younger version of that player that they can have Calais Campbell mentor for a year, which would be the perfect scenario. And Tyree Wilson is basically that player. I mean, he's not 6'8" like Calais Campbell. I mean, no one really is. He is over 6'6", so you got that. Right. And then he has almost 36-inch arms, which is just ridiculous length. Like, just, 96th percentile. He would have one of the longest arm lengths of any active player, I believe. So, people can say, oh, well, is how good is he as a pass rusher on the outside? You're going to have to let him rush from the inside. Yes, Brian Nielsen does this. Like, this is not a scheme where you need to be worried about, well, are they going to just make him play edge all day and never let him rush on the inside? No, they will let him rush on the inside. They will kick him inside because they have the third down specialists outside to do that. They've got Ebiketie, they got Malone, they got Lorenzo Carter. So they got plenty of those guys. What they don't have is, until they signed Calais Campbell, they didn't really have that big end that Nielsen typically likes. So I think with Tyree Wilson, can't really think of a better player to have behind Calais Campbell. Very similar role there. I agree with you that he's not likely to be there. But you take a corner at 8 or our Lord and Savior Bijan. And at 44, you're going to have a lot of options at edge, including guys like Keon White and guys like Tuli Tupulatu, who neither one is like quite the specimen that, Tyree Wilson is. I mean, it's sort of one of one, but both are those big end type of players that can provide a similar role. And I do like the edge group at 44 generally better than the corner group. That's there. So I wouldn't be upset about that either, but this is, if you need corner or edge on day 2, this is a great class for it. So that this is one of those years where we could see something crazy like Bijan at 8, and then they could still get 2 starters at 2 big positions of need on day 2 because that's the strength of this class. And they were, I think, very wise to go out and sign on Yamada. They were lucky to get Goldman back, hopefully, and Calais Campbell for his inside snaps, because this interior class is, like, it is not good.
No.
Yeah.
No. But, I think it's fun. You mentioned Keon White. I'm not sure, how much of his tape you've watched. I'd imagine quite a bit of it, right? The one Keon White play that always comes to mind for me, Georgia Tech had him drop into coverage against Kenny McIntosh against Georgia. And he is running. He got beat on the route, just on like the initial acceleration phase of the route. I think it was a wheel route for McIntosh. But Keon, after the first probably 5 to 10 yards, runs stride for stride with McIntosh for like 50 yards. And I just remember, like, guy's 285, 290 pounds running stride for stride with a running back. He's really good. And I just, when you think about, what he did as well at the Senior Bowl, Keon's a very, very intriguing player. And you mentioned, play outside, can play inside. Height, weight wise, I do believe he's quite comparable with Cam Jordan. Right. And so to me, if that's the role that you want, you get a high upside guy with Keon who can, I'm not as big on him as many other people are. I will admit that. But with Keon and with Calais Campbell already in the fold, you got a great mentor, just phenomenal. I think that's, for me, one of the one thing that people haven't talked about with Campbell is that he's going to be what I pretty much called him, a coach who can still, rush the passer at a pretty high level. And so to me, I mean, obviously that's a pretty, great coach, right? If you're a team in need of a pass rusher. But so with Campbell, I really think it kind of opens up the possibility for you to get even more aggressive with high upside guys, right? It's why I would love Tyree Wilson at pick 8, because I really feel like Campbell could really help him out as well. And, obviously Keon White, really, if you're going to go for an upside guy, for me, if you've got Campbell in the building already and you've got these terrific pressure guys, I mean, inside, right? Onyemata, Taquan Graham, just tremendous pressure player inside, only getting better. You got Grady Jarrett, obviously, still. You've got the outside linebackers with Ebiketie, Malone, Lorenzo Carter. It's a great time if you're the Falcons to draft a high upside guy at defensive end with just a freakish athletic profile. And with Tyree, with Keon, that's the type of guy that you're getting. And so I don't think you can really go wrong if you're adding either one of those two. And it kind of sounds like you're on the same page, Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I do lean. I mean, if Tyree's there, then that obviously takes precedence. But otherwise, I think you probably go for either the corner or Bijan at 8, depending on who's on the board there. And then you go for the edge guy at 44. I think that's typically been what I've preferred in mock drafts. I generally like those ones the best because I think the corners that are available at 75 tend to be better because there's just so many of them. And the Falcons, again, with having AJ Terrell, you don't necessarily need to go for one of these CB1 upside guys, I mean, it's nice, but you could go for like a DJ Turner or like a Kytrell Clark or one of these guys that could be more of a CB2 because you have Terrell. You don't have to. You've got your big prototypical outside matchup corner with the bigger receivers. You can go for the speedy guy, or you can go for the more specialized guy, or someone who doesn't have the perfect size profile or whatever out there. And I think you can do that in the third round in this class and come away with a starter in the third round, which is not something you can always do. So that's where I lean typically. But other options, I mean, like we haven't talked about left guard at all. That seems to be the one spot on the offensive line that's basically not settled. I mean, they seem satisfied with Matt Hennessy, Jalen Mayfield, Justin Schaefer, whoever they like the best out of that group. I mean, do you think it's probably Hennessy is who they're favoring there? Or?
Yeah, I still kind of feel like they might add to it is where I would lean, but I'd feel very confident in that. But I think that right now, if they had to play a game tomorrow, I think Hennessy would be the guy. I thought he was actually pretty good when he started last 2 games of the year. I thought he was pretty encouraging actually at left guard. And so to me, you throw him out there. It's his last year of the contract, obviously from his rookie deal. Crazy to think about that, but I think if you can get a guy like Hennessy to play at a solid level, you don't have to invest, like, for example, pick 8 on a Skoronski, for example, and play him at left guard. If you can get another good year out of Matt Hennessy, let him walk, whatever it might be, and you're just going to trust Ledford, tremendous offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford. But if you're going to just trust him to just coach up everybody, coach up Mayfield, coach up Hennessy, I feel like there is an argument to be made that you could get in my personal opinion, Elijah Wilkinson was a mighty fine left guard last year. I did not, when I watched the tape, I was like, this guy looks like an NFL starting caliber left guard. It was not like it was not like a Jalen Mayfield 2021 situation where it's just like not pretty to watch, right? Like it was fine. He was steady. He held his own. And I feel like if you can get that out of Hennessy with what you've got now, left guard, right guard, or left tackle, right guard, right tackle. You got obviously Matthews, Lindstrom, and McGarry all coming back. And I expect Drew Dahlman will take a step forward as well. And so if you can get just adequate play out of a guy like Matt Hennessy, I think you're going to be doing just fine. And I think Hennessy proved last year at left guard that he can actually play at a pretty good level, right? And I mean, the one thing I feel like a lot of people miss with Hennessy is that he was obviously, you were at training camp last year, so you would know, but Arthur Smith talked quite a bit about how Hennessy played well in training camp is what he's stressed, is that Hennessy didn't lose the job. Drew Dahlman won it. And so to me, with Hennessy, it's not necessarily an example of like a Mayfield from last year where, not a good rookie year. Training camp is just rough. He gets hurt in training camp, misses, a lot of the year. It's not a situation like that, right? And so with Hennessy, I feel like there's still a chance that he can be a starting caliber NFL player. And, the more, Fontenot is stressed. If we can keep it in-house, that's what we prefer to do. And so I don't think they're in a huge rush because I do think that Hennessy, if he is their week 1 left guard, I don't think they would hate that. But I still would expect them to look to add. Particularly free agency is where I would expect. But how do you feel, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be able to do, unless they trade down and pick up like extra day 2 picks, they're probably not going to be able to do edge, corner, wide receiver, and interior offensive line. They can do 3 of the 4, right. But they're not going to be able to do all 4 more than likely. So, if they take Bijan, then it's going to make it even more interesting there. But I do think that it depends. Like 44 is a total wild card. It really just depends on who falls there. I mean, I think they will use that pick very similar to the first rounder, and that they'll just see who's on the board. I could see like if John Michael Schmitz is there, which I don't think is going to happen, then they could go that direction. Joe Tippmann is really interesting as another guy that could play guard or center. Right. Steve Avila, I feel like it's not like the best scheme fit. I mean, I think if he loses like 10 pounds, he's probably, he tested decently well, especially at like 330. So like if he loses 10 pounds, then yeah, he's probably fine for the zone, but not really been his bread and butter so far. So there's certainly some guys there. Chandler Zavala, maybe a little bit later from NC
Yeah.
State, is picking up a lot of steam. But at this point, it does seem like that's less likely than the other options. But I think they're sort of holding off, either to see if they do get someone in the draft that they like, or to just let the competition play out, and then they're going to keep money. They're going to keep resources available to where if someone shakes loose in camp that they like better, or if things are not looking good at left guard or center or whatever, then they could make some sort of late trade like they did, for Andy Levitri back in the day.
Yeah.
That it's not that hard to get expensive veteran guards off of teams. Like some of these teams may be itching to trade some of these guys if their own rookies are panning out. So they'll have opportunities to address it, but it seems at this point like they at least are comfortable enough with that group that they have in there. And they did really quickly sign Kyle Hinton when he was waived early in the offseason. So they seem to like him as well. So we'll see. But I do think that does show that they have some level of confidence in that group to get a starter. And look, if they're going to spend money everywhere else on the offensive line, except center right now, then they have to go cheap at least one spot. Like you can't pay every single player on your offensive line a big contract. It just doesn't work. So
Right.
left guard seems like the one where they're going to try to get value. And I think that's generally a pretty good spot, pretty good spot to try to save money. I prefer that to tackle or center, obviously. So, I think it could work out just fine. I mean, last year, basically every single player they inserted at left guard was at least serviceable. So, with Dwayne Ledford here, it's like, oh, maybe we can actually coach up these offensive linemen. And now with Ryan Nielsen here, maybe it's like, oh, we can actually coach up these defensive linemen. It's amazing.
It's a great time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really crazy to have player like legitimate player development people in important places like up front. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun to actually like draft a guy who it's like, hey, he's still like scratching the very base surface of what he can become, but we actually believe that we can coach him to the point where he is a legitimate NFL impact player, which is a lot of fun. But real quick, you mentioned Zavala. I think he is a very, very good fit. He was at the Shrine Bowl, which I think is important to point out. And so I think there is an element of familiarity there that is important. And so to me, I think that it feels like he's risen into the top 100, talk. Whether he ends up that high, we'll have to see. But, he's at a great pre-draft process. But I think if he makes it to round 4, he is the type of guy, the NC State connection there. I mean, there's a little bit going on there when you connect some stuff where it's like Zavala would be a logical pick. And so to me, if you're going to wait and you're going to draft a guy in round 4 and he falls, because I feel like it's not a guarantee he ends up going top 100, right? And so, I mean, to me, he would be for sure a name to watch is how I'll word it for now. But I do think there is an argument for him, especially, round 4, or I guess a hypothetical round 3 trade down if they wanted to, but that's conversation for another day.
Yes, that's where we have to start writing down the strategy because there's a lot of moving parts. But no, I do like Zavala. I think that it would be wise to consider that, and I think that he's a good fit. And you mentioned all the connections there, so he makes a lot of logical sense for them to add. And they've been pretty quiet. They haven't really gone out of their way to make it known that they're interested in him. And fans, right, I think, tend to overrate the visits and things like that. I think people sort of look at them as like, oh, well, this is what teams do to show that they're interested in a player. No, this is what teams do when they don't have enough information on a player. If they have enough information, they don't need to meet with you. So, I wouldn't assume that the Falcons do or don't have. I mean, if they're meeting with them, then obviously they have some level of interest. But if they're not meeting with them, that doesn't mean anything. Like they, haven't met with the top corners. Do you think that means they're not interested in the top corners? I don't.
Oh, exactly. As kind of, I guess, as I don't know how to word this, but I guess as in the media world, we kind of have to report on the stuff of, hey, they're visiting with him. Hey, they had a top 30 with him. Hey, they had a top or formal interview with him at the combine with whoever. But it is important to realize that a lot of this stuff right now is just cross-checking information. Fontenot's mentioned that a few times throughout the offseason, like, hey, it's really just we're trying to collect as much information as we can about these guys, and it's really just about, checking this box, checking that box. And I feel like that's why Anthony Richardson's coming in, right? Just because he is a good fit, but you have to figure out, how he operates in case, for example, a Trey Lance situation comes up where he's not starting, 2 years from now, and maybe he's on the trade block, maybe he's not, and you want to know, or I guess there's at least some level of interest in the player, but how is he away from football, right? You figure that out now. And I think a lot of people kind of don't fully grasp that part of the pre-draft process is just because a guy, just because maybe you won't draft him now, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to coach him or work with him in the future. And I feel like that's one thing that people don't, it just kind of flies over their head sometimes. It's like it's more than just for now. And on that note, it's why, if you look at lists by year end, they maybe only draft a guy or two that took a top 30, and so everybody loves, making the list. I make the list. I know you guys have a list as well. It's very good. I've used that for a long time. So shout out to Falcoholic. It's not for sure a great, grasp or a great indicator of, hey, they love this guy because they had a formal in a top 30 with him. It's all about information.
Yeah. It's just part of the process. Not, I think people read a lot too much into stuff sometimes. So sometimes we don't read enough into other things, but
all part of the fun, right? All part of the fun.
Yep. But Daniel, terrific stuff. We covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the future. Guys, he is Daniel Flick at DFlickDraft on the Twitter. Anything you're working on you want to plug for the people?
In the coming weeks, we should have some fun Matt Ryan content. Matt Ryan was at a Atlanta charity a few weeks ago. I've been able to talk with some people involved in that. So that was a lot of fun. Shout out Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan and Sarah just had their third child 3 days ago. So congratulations to them. Very happy for you all. Hope all's going well. Should have some Mohamed Sanu content. Kevin,
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of fun. We'll see about some of that stuff.
We'll see when we see it. Yeah.
For sure. That's a good way to put it. And then also, regular pre-draft stuff. Should have some fun stuff coming out or some fun draft profiles from stuff I've heard from college teammates and things of that nature. So a lot in the works for sure. A lot of exciting content coming out. A lot of competition against the Falcoholic trying to. No, I'm just messing around with you. But
this is the content wars. We have to fight them. This is very antagonistic.
Yeah. No. And on that note, I feel like a lot of people kind of think of media outlets as rivals, but we're all friends. So for sure, love your all's work. Glad to hop on with you all. Would love to come back whenever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And guys, thank you for listening, watching today to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us that 5-star review on the podcast platform. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic live as well. We will be back on Wednesday for our first live mock draft on the Falcoholic Live, so you guys have that to look forward to. It's finally here. We've teased it, 15,000 times over the past 3 months, so it's finally actually happening. So there you go. There you go. It's official now. I can't back out. So we'll see you guys for that, and of course the draft party itself coming all 3 nights of the draft once again. I was telling Daniel that I think that was my longest show. Was actually the third day of the draft last year. So hopefully they will get rid of their 7th round pick. That's my hope. That they'll get rid of those 7th round picks. But so far they've done it every year. So I'm holding out hope that it won't be that long. But you never know. We're at the mercy of the team here. Maybe they've got those 7th round sleepers they're just trying to add. So, but again, thanks to Daniel for coming on. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. We'll see you next time on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Have a great day, folks.